The Galactic Empire's ships appeared on Earth's radar without warning. In the vastness of space, their arrival seemed almost insignificant, but to the people of Earth, it was anything but. It was the beginning of something no one could have predicted. Humanity, small and insignificant by the Empire's standards, had no idea how to respond. The message that came shortly after was chilling. A broadcast so cold and final that it seemed like a death sentence. The Empire's voice was clear, echoing across Earth's communication systems, demanding the complete surrender of Earth to their rule. If Earth resisted, the Empire would wipe it off the map. The leader of the Galactic Empire, High Lord Valon, looked down upon Earth from the bridge of his flagship, smiling as he awaited the inevitable. To him, it was nothing more than a formality. The human race had no power, no technology to challenge the Empire's advanced fleet. His vast empire had crushed civilizations far greater than this one. Earth had nothing but primitive technology, weak defenses, and a fractured society. It was clear to him that humanity's time had come to an end. Meanwhile, on Earth, panic spread through the world's governments. World leaders scrambled, trying to figure out what to do. Some suggested negotiations, others wanted to fight back. But the truth was clear. Earth was ill-prepared for war with an empire of such power. The threat was too great. The humans could barely defend themselves against a few rogue space pirates, let alone the overwhelming might of the Galactic Empire. In the heart of Earth's United Nations building, the representatives of every nation came together. A rare moment of unity in a world torn by division. The decision was clear. Surrender was the only option. They had no choice but to bow before the might of the Empire. As the decision was about to be finalized, a voice from the back of the room interrupted. It was Colonel Hannah Graves, a military strategist from Earth's Defense Forces. She stepped forward, her face calm but with a fire burning in her eyes. "We don't have to surrender," she said, her voice carrying over the room. "We may not have the fleet or the weapons of the Empire, but we have something they can't understand: our will to survive. We've never given up before. Why should we start now?" For a moment, the room was silent. Everyone knew what Colonel Graves was suggesting. A fight against an enemy that was far more powerful than they could comprehend. There were no guarantees of victory, no promises of survival. But something about her words stirred something deep within the hearts of the humans gathered there. They were faced with an impossible decision: bend the knee to an empire that would destroy their home, or rise up and face the overwhelming force of the galaxy. The room erupted into arguments. Some called for immediate submission, fearing the consequences of resistance. Others, inspired by Graves' words, argued that humanity's spirit was more valuable than any weapon. The debate raged on, but one thing was certain: the people of Earth would not go down without a fight. Finally, the United Nations passed a resolution. Earth would not surrender, but they wouldn't make the mistake of rushing into war without preparing. Time was running out, but for the first time in history, the nations of Earth agreed on one thing: they would face the Empire, not with empty threats, but with a plan. A plan that would take everything humanity had: its ingenuity, its determination, and its willingness to sacrifice. In a hidden underground facility, a team of the best minds in science, engineering, and military strategy began to work together. The Empire had assumed that Earth was weak, unprepared. But humanity had one advantage the Empire could never anticipate: their ability to adapt. They would take whatever scraps of alien technology they could find, and they would use them to fight back. The warships, the weapons, and the tools needed for battle were being built in secret, while the Empire laughed at their pathetic warning. The final message Earth sent to the Empire was simple. It was a single transmission that shook the foundations of the Empire. It was 3 words, spoken with no hint of fear, no trace of hesitation: prepare for war. Back on Valon's flagship, the message was received with laughter. Do they think they can challenge us? Valon sneered, looking at his officers. Let them try. They will regret this. The words were dismissed as a desperate cry for help, an attempt to delay the inevitable. But as Valon turned back to his fleet, he failed to realize that the humans had already started something they couldn't stop. As the Empire prepared its next steps, they had no idea what was coming. They had underestimated the humans. They thought the message was a joke, an empty threat. But they didn't understand what humanity was capable of when cornered. Earth had just given its first warning, and the Empire would soon learn that humanity was not to be underestimated. The Galactic Empire had never faced an opponent quite like Earth. As they advanced toward the planet, confident in their strength, the Empire's commanders were certain that this would be an easy conquest. The message Earth had sent, "Prepare for war," was nothing more than an empty threat, a desperate plea from a species that knew it was doomed. At least, that's what they thought. But what the Empire didn't realize was that Earth had already begun to fight back in ways they could never have imagined. In the quiet of Earth's military headquarters, a sense of urgency filled the air. Scientists and engineers worked around the clock, feverishly gathering alien technology from the few encounters humanity had had with extraterrestrial life. They didn't have the luxury of time, but they had one thing the Empire could never understand: the ability to improvise. With the help of a few discarded scraps of alien ships, Earth's brightest minds were piecing together a weapon. A ship capable of fighting back against the Empire's superior technology. Colonel Hannah Graves, now leading the charge, was not just a strategist. She was a symbol of humanity's determination. "We're not just building a weapon," she told the engineers as they worked. "We're building hope. We're telling the Empire that we won't just bow down to them." While humanity scrambled to prepare, the Empire continued with its plans, utterly unaware of the growing storm on Earth. The commanders believed their overwhelming fleet would crush any resistance within days. They were wrong. The arrogance of the Empire clouded their judgment. They expected Earth to be intimidated by their technological superiority. But what they didn't understand was that humanity had always thrived in the face of adversity. The day arrived when Earth's new weapon, a ship unlike anything the Empire had ever seen, was ready for its first test. The warship, built from salvaged alien technology and powered by human ingenuity, was named the Resolute. Its hull shimmered with a strange, unfamiliar energy that made even the most advanced Empire ships wary. But the Empire's fleet remained confident, convinced they would destroy the Resolute within moments. The first strike came without warning. The Empire's fleet, in its arrogance, was slow to react. The Resolute, moving with surprising speed, fired its primary weapon, a burst of energy so intense that it obliterated one of the Empire's destroyers in a single shot. The Empire's fleet was thrown into disarray. Their commanders scrambled to respond, but Earth's ship had already disappeared into the void of space, leaving them bewildered. The Empire's reaction was swift. The fleet regrouped, determined to annihilate this new threat before it could cause any more damage. A series of messages were sent to Earth, demanding an immediate ceasefire, but Earth's leaders refused to back down. The Empire had underestimated the human resolve, and now it was too late. Back on Earth, news of the Resolute's success spread like wildfire. People across the globe, once fearful and uncertain, began to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could stand up to the Empire. The world, once divided by political struggles and wars, now stood united against a common enemy. Humanity had taken its first real stand, and it was a bold one. As the Empire launched another wave of attacks, Earth's forces were ready. They now knew that their survival didn't depend on the size of their fleet, but on the strength of their resolve. Humanity's strategy wasn't to win a single battle, but to send a message. They were not going to bow to any empire, no matter how powerful. In the depths of space, the Empire's fleet began to realize the magnitude of their mistake. The humans weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for their home, their families, their future. They weren't like any species the Empire had ever conquered. And with every passing hour, Earth's resistance was growing stronger. The message that had once been laughed off, "Prepare for war," was now ringing in the Empire's ears. The truth was, Earth wasn't backing down. They were preparing for something far bigger than a mere battle. They were preparing for war, a war that would shake the very foundations of the Empire and send ripples of fear through the entire galaxy. The Empire's arrogance had led them to believe that humanity was weak, easy prey. But as the Resolute launched another strike against their fleet, the Empire began to question everything they knew about power. And deep within their ranks, doubt began to spread. Could the Empire really defeat a species so determined to survive? Could they truly destroy a people who had nothing left to lose? The first steps had been taken. Earth had made its move. The fight for humanity's survival was just beginning, and the Empire had no idea what it was about to face. The warning had been sent, but now the Empire would understand. Humanity was not to be underestimated. The war had officially begun, but the Empire still refused to take Earth's resistance seriously. They were used to quick victories, to crushing weaker civilizations with minimal effort. Humanity's first strike, the destruction of one of their destroyers, was written off as a fluke. They thought the humans would cower, retreat, or beg for mercy. But they were wrong. The Empire's hubris blinded them to the reality unfolding before them. They were not prepared for the ingenuity and relentless spirit of humanity. The Galactic Empire mobilized its full force, ready to destroy the Resolute and wipe out Earth's newfound hope. They believed that their overwhelming numbers and technology would make quick work of the humans. But what they didn't know was that Earth had been preparing in secret. As the Empire's fleet gathered for a decisive strike, more ships, built using salvage technology from the first alien encounters, rose from the depths of Earth's oceans and hidden military bases. Each was more advanced than anything humanity had ever created before, each powered by a mix of human innovation and alien technology. Back on Earth, Colonel Hannah Graves had become the symbol of humanity's defiance. Her leadership inspired not just the military but the entire planet. In every corner of the world, people who had once lived in fear of the Empire's coming were now brimming with hope. It was as if the fires of defiance had ignited in the hearts of every man, woman, and child. They were not just defending their homes. They were fighting for the right to exist. As the new fleet of human ships, including the Resolute, prepared for battle, Earth's message to the Empire was clear. They would not surrender, and they would not be intimidated. The Earthlings would fight for their survival, and they would use every tool at their disposal. The Empire, meanwhile, continued to underestimate their opponents. The commanders of the Empire's fleet still believed that Earth's new ships were nothing more than a temporary inconvenience. They expected their superior technology to crush the humans quickly, to show them the consequences of defying the Empire. But the Empire was wrong, and the reality was about to hit them with full force. The humans had learned quickly. The Resolute, the flagship of Earth's resistance, was equipped with weapons that the Empire had never seen before. Energy weapons that could disable even the most advanced shields, propulsion systems that allowed the ships to outmaneuver their attackers. But perhaps the most terrifying weapon in humanity's arsenal was their willingness to fight to the death. They had no choice but to resist, and that made them far more dangerous than the Empire could ever understand. The battle began in earnest as the Empire launched its first wave of ships, a fleet that dwarfed anything Earth could field. It was a show of overwhelming force, designed to break the human will. But what the Empire didn't expect was how the human ships fought. They didn't act like the weak, frightened creatures they thought Earth's people were. They fought with precision, with intelligence, and with an almost desperate determination. As the human ships engaged the Empire's fleet, the battle unfolded differently than expected. The Resolute fired its primary weapon once again, sending a pulse of energy that obliterated another of the Empire's warships. The Empire's commanders were stunned. They had no idea how the humans were able to inflict such damage, but the loss of a second ship was something they hadn't planned for. In the blink of an eye, the Empire's fleet was already on the defensive. The humans had turned the tide of the battle with their first strike, and the Empire was struggling to react. On the ground, Earth's leaders watched the battle unfold on screens, their hearts in their throats. They knew the war was far from over, but the message was clear. Humanity wasn't going to go down without a fight. The Earth had not just sent a message to the Empire with their warning. They had shown them what was possible. And as the Resolute and the other human ships tore through the Empire's defenses, the Empire's arrogance began to crumble. Vaylon, the leader of the Galactic Empire, watched the chaos unfold from his flagship, his expression twisted with disbelief. "Impossible," he muttered to himself. "How can they be so powerful? How did they learn this so quickly?" The truth was that the Empire had underestimated the one thing they couldn't see in the humans: their adaptability. While the Empire relied on brute force and superior technology, the humans relied on something more: their ability to learn, to improvise, and to fight with everything they had. The Empire had never encountered a race that was willing to fight so fiercely for its survival. For the first time, the Empire began to understand the true meaning of Earth's warning. The humans weren't simply defending their planet. They were sending a message to the galaxy. Earth wasn't just another civilization to be conquered. They were a force to be reckoned with. And this was only the beginning. The battle raged on, and the Empire's once overwhelming advantage in numbers and firepower began to erode. Each new clash left the Empire reeling, unsure of how to handle a species that fought with such unpredictable savagery and ingenuity. The Empire had expected Earth to crumble under their might, but the reality was far different. Humanity, despite their technological disadvantage, had proven that their spirit was stronger than any weapon. As the Empire regrouped for another attack, Colonel Hannah Graves stood before a holographic display of the battlefield. The Empire's fleet was vast, a wall of warships that stretched across the stars. Yet Earth's resistance had grown, its ships now a swarm that moved with a precision and ferocity that matched any military force in the galaxy. The Empire was no longer certain they could win. "Colonel Graves," a voice from behind interrupted her thoughts. It was General Salazar, one of Earth's top strategists. "We've intercepted another transmission from the Empire. They're preparing to send in their most advanced fleet. They think they can end this in one final assault." Graves turned, her face hard. "What's their timeline?" "Within the next 24 hours. They're counting on sheer numbers to overwhelm us." Graves nodded grimly. "We have to be ready. The longer we hold them off, the more we prove they underestimated us. This fight is more than just about winning. It's about showing the galaxy that we won't be enslaved. We can't back down now." Her voice was firm, and there was a fire in her eyes. The humans might have been facing an enemy far stronger than themselves, but they were not going to surrender. Their fight had become something bigger than just survival. It was a war for their future, a war for their right to exist as free beings in the galaxy. In space, the Resolute and Earth's growing fleet prepared for the inevitable clash. The new fleet wasn't just built from alien technology. It was crafted with a human touch. They were unpredictable, creative, and willing to take risks no other species would. The Empire, with its rigid hierarchies and strategies, was struggling to adapt. The humans had already proved that they could learn quickly and adapt even faster. They were not going to let themselves be crushed without giving the Empire a fight they would never forget. The Empire's new fleet arrived as expected, a massive force with dreadnoughts and battleships, all boasting weapons far more advanced than anything Earth had previously encountered. Their fleet towered in space, an intimidating display of power. But instead of cowering, the humans rallied. The ships from Earth moved into position, forming a perimeter around the Resolute, preparing for the biggest battle they had yet faced. Vaylon, the leader of the Galactic Empire, stood in the command center of his flagship, staring at the holographic map of the battlefield. The humans were cornered now, their resources stretched thin. This would be their last stand. His lips curled into a cold smile as he watched the human fleet form a defensive line. He was certain this would be the end. He had underestimated them once, but no more. The Empire's advanced fleet would crush them, once and for all. "Begin the assault," Valen ordered, his voice calm but full of disdain. The first wave of Empire ships launched their attack, firing massive plasma blasts toward the human ships. The intensity of the barrage shook the very fabric of space, and the humans could feel the impact even from their faraway command centers. Yet Earth's fleet responded with speed and agility, dodging the worst of the Empire's fire. The ships danced around the blasts, using their smaller size and unpredictability to stay out of reach. The Resolute led the charge, its engines firing at full power as it soared toward the Empire's flagship. Colonel Graves's voice echoed over the communication systems of every human ship, her words cutting through the chaos. "All ships, hold the line. We fight for every inch of space, for every human life. We will not fall today." The response was immediate. Earth's fleet moved as one, coordinating their attacks with precision. The Empire's flagship was bombarded by a series of energy pulses, each strike weakening its shields. The Empire's crew, shaken by the ferocity of the human resistance, scrambled to maintain control. The once unbeatable Empire was now forced to react defensively. For the first time, their massive fleet seemed vulnerable. The battle stretched on for hours. As more of the Empire's ships fell to the relentless attacks from Earth's forces, the tide began to turn. Every time the Empire thought they had gained the upper hand, a new human ship appeared from the shadows, using their advanced, unpredictable tactics to strike from angles the Empire never anticipated. Earth was not only fighting to defend itself, it was outsmarting the Empire at every turn. Valen watched the battle unfold with growing frustration. His fleet was being systematically dismantled by an enemy he had once thought would be easily crushed. "This is impossible," he muttered to himself. "How are they doing this?" The truth was simple. The humans had something the Empire could never understand: resilience. They didn't rely on overwhelming power alone. They fought with heart, with determination, and with the desperate desire to survive. And as the final battle raged on, the Empire began to see just how dangerous Earth could be when it had nothing left to lose. The Resolute delivered another devastating blow to the Empire's flagship, tearing through its hull and sending it spiraling into the void. The Empire's fleet faltered. Without their leader, their unity began to crumble. The humans had proven it. They were not to be underestimated. The fight for Earth was far from over, but the message was clear. The Empire had been shaken to its core. The galaxy would never forget the day when Earth stood up and refused to bow to the might of the Galactic Empire. For Nini. The aftermath of the Empire's failed assault was felt across both the battlefield and the galaxy. For the first time in the long history of the Galactic Empire, an opponent had not only resisted but fought back with a force that seemed to grow stronger by the minute. Across the Empire's vast territories, whispers of the humans' unexpected victory spread like wildfire, striking fear into the hearts of the Empire's subjects. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were facing the consequences. Back on Earth, the victory was bittersweet. The damage to the fleet had been significant, and the cost in lives was high. Yet there was a sense of hope in the air, a hope that had not existed before. The people of Earth knew they were not yet safe, but for the first time, they felt the tide of war shifting in their favor. Colonel Hannah Graves stood in the command center of the Resolute, looking out at the stars. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. The Empire would not let this defeat go unanswered. They would come back stronger, and humanity had to be ready. "We've shown them that we're not easy prey," Graves said to General Salazar, who stood beside her. "But we can't let our guard down. We need to keep pushing, keep fighting. We need to make them realize that Earth is not a target. They're the ones who are vulnerable now." Salazar nodded in agreement. "We've given them a taste of what we're capable of, but we need to ensure that message sticks. If we wait for them to regroup, we'll be giving them the chance to hit us harder. We need to strike first." Graves considered his words carefully. She knew the risk of such an attack, but she also knew that humanity could not afford to simply wait and react. The Empire had shown its hand, and now it was time to take the fight to them. If they could cripple the Empire's ability to wage war, perhaps they could bring an end to this conflict before it escalated even further. But there was a problem. The Empire had resources that far outstripped Earth's. Their fleet was vast, and they controlled entire sectors of space. A direct assault was dangerous, and they needed a plan. It wasn't just about the strength of Earth's military. It was about the message they needed to send. They had to make the Empire understand that this was not a war they could win. "We need to cripple their supply lines," Graves said, her voice filled with determination. "If we can hit their resources, they'll be forced to divert forces to protect them. It will buy us time, and more importantly, it will send a message. They can't rely on their superiority." Salazar's eyes lit up with the idea. A strategic strike on their supply hubs. It would disrupt their operations and force them into a defensive posture. If we can catch them off guard, it might be our best chance to make a real impact. Graves nodded. "We'll need every ship we have for this, and we'll have to move quickly. We can't give them time to react. It's a gamble, but it's one we have to take. We'll show them that we're not just defending Earth. We're taking the fight to them." The plan was set into motion immediately. A covert operation was launched to strike at the Empire's key supply depots scattered across their empire. These hubs were crucial for maintaining the Empire's war effort, and the human strategy was simple: hit them where it hurt. If they could destroy enough of the Empire's logistical infrastructure, they could grind the Empire's war machine to a halt. The first strike took place in a remote star system, far from the Empire's main lines. Earth's fleet, still reeling from the previous battle, moved quickly and quietly, striking before the Empire had a chance to notice. A small group of human ships, including the Resolute, dropped out of hyperspace and immediately launched their assault on a supply depot. The Empire's response was slow, and within hours, the depot was a smoldering ruin, its critical resources scattered across space. The success of this first mission was a significant morale booster for Earth's forces. They had struck deep into enemy territory and left a lasting mark on the Empire's infrastructure. The Empire, however, was not so easily shaken. Their response came quickly. Within days, they launched a counterattack, sending a massive fleet to retaliate. But it was clear that the Empire's arrogance had been shattered. They no longer viewed humanity as a small, insignificant species. The humans had proven themselves to be a formidable foe. As Earth's forces regrouped, General Salazar turned to Graves, a sense of urgency in his voice. "We've hit one depot, but they'll come for us now. We need to keep moving, keep hitting their supply chains. If we can keep them on the defensive, we can turn this war around." Graves nodded, her mind already working through the next steps. "We're not just fighting for survival anymore," she said quietly. "We're fighting for control. This war will be won or lost in the supply lines. If we can choke the Empire's resources, we'll cripple their ability to fight. And when that happens, we'll be ready to make our final move." The war had taken a new turn. Earth was no longer the underdog. It was a fighter, determined and willing to do whatever it took to survive. The humans had proven their resilience time and time again, and now they were taking the fight to the Empire, not just as a means of survival, but as a fight for their freedom. And with each victory, their message to the Empire became clearer: Earth would not be defeated. The Empire's response to humanity's growing resistance came swiftly and with terrifying force. After the successful destruction of one of their key supply depots, the Empire launched a full-scale retaliation, sending one of their most formidable fleets to Earth's doorstep. The sheer power of the fleet was enough to make even the most experienced generals feel the weight of impending doom. They were coming to end the humans' defiance once and for all. Colonel Graves stood once again in the command center of the Resolute, the holographic display before her showing the approaching fleet. Her heart raced, but her face remained calm. The humans had made an impact, but the Empire's retaliation was bound to be brutal. The next few days would decide whether they would keep their hard-won ground or be crushed under the might of the Empire. "Colonel," General Salazar's voice cut through her thoughts, "the Empire is coming at us with everything they've got. We've seen their movements. They're coming to hit Earth directly. If we don't act fast, we'll be wiped out before we can even mount a defense." Graves clenched her fists, her mind already calculating their next move. The attack on Earth itself was inevitable. It was only a matter of time before the Empire realized that the humans had no intention of surrendering. The Earth's defenses, though formidable, were not enough to withstand a full-on assault by the Empire's overwhelming forces. "We don't have the luxury of waiting," she said, turning to face the gathered officers. "If we let them attack Earth, we'll lose everything. We need to act now, disrupt their advance before they reach the planet." The plan she devised was a gamble. Earth's fleet was still recovering from the previous battles, but it had grown in strength and coordination. There was no longer any question about whether humanity could fight back. The question now was whether they could survive the Empire's wrath. Graves and Salazar rallied the human fleet, organizing an offensive that would take the battle to the Empire's doorstep before they could make landfall. The objective was clear: strike their fleet before it could establish a foothold near Earth. Time was running out, and humanity had to act fast. As Earth's ships prepared for the assault, the tension in the command center was palpable. The stakes were higher than ever before. The enemy fleet was massive, but they would have to rely on their speed and tactical genius to overcome the odds. Graves' voice echoed through the fleet's comms systems. "Listen up. The Empire thinks they can crush us with sheer numbers, but we've shown them before that we're more than just a target. We fight for Earth, for our people. We fight to show the galaxy that they were wrong about us. We are not their slaves. We are their nightmare." The fleet's engines roared to life as the Resolute led the charge, flanked by other human ships, their weapons primed and ready. The Empire's fleet was still out of range, but soon the two forces would clash in a battle that would shake the galaxy to its core. The first wave of Empire ships came into view, massive dreadnoughts bristling with weapons. The sheer scale of their fleet was a sight to behold, but it was no match for humanity's fierce resolve. Earth's ships moved with calculated precision, striking at the Empire's flanks with unexpected ferocity. Each ship that fell left a gap in the Empire's formation, and with each gap, the humans moved in closer, pushing the Empire back. "Hold the line." Graves' voice rang out over the comms again. "We push them back with everything we've got. They want to crush us. Let's show them how wrong they were to think they could defeat humanity." The Empire's fleet retaliated, launching wave after wave of plasma fire. Explosions rocked the fabric of space as blasts struck the hulls of Earth's ships. But humanity fought with something the Empire could never anticipate: resilience. Every time one of their ships was hit, another would take its place, a relentless swarm of humanity's best and brightest. They were prepared to die for this cause, but they were not prepared to surrender. The battle waged on for hours, both sides suffering heavy losses. Earth's fleet, despite its smaller size, was managing to outmaneuver the Empire's ships with surprising effectiveness. The humans' unpredictable tactics, honed by necessity and fueled by desperation, caught the Empire's commanders off guard at every turn. But the Empire wasn't finished. As the battle neared its climax, the full force of their remaining ships surged forward in one final push. The tide of battle began to shift. Earth's fleet, battered and bruised, was on the verge of being overwhelmed. The Empire's reinforcements had arrived in full force, and their massive dreadnoughts now towered over the remaining human ships. "We need a miracle," General Salazar shouted, watching as another wave of human ships was torn apart by the Empire's relentless assault. The humans had fought valiantly, but it seemed the Empire's power would prove to be too much. Earth's final stand was on the line. Then, just as all seemed lost, a new signal appeared on the radar, one that the Empire hadn't anticipated. A fleet of ships, built from the remnants of earlier battles and bolstered by new reinforcements, dropped out of hyperspace just behind the Empire's lines. The humans were not alone. The reinforcements were from Earth's allies, other human colonies that had been quietly organizing in the shadows, waiting for the moment to strike. Now, with their combined strength, Earth's fleet surged forward once more, fighting alongside their fellow humans, proving that the galaxy had made one grave mistake: underestimating the power of unity. With the sudden turn in the battle, the Empire's fleet was caught off guard, and Earth's forces pounced. The Empire's advanced ships began to fall, one by one, as the combined might of humanity's fleets overwhelmed them. The tide of the battle had shifted again. The Empire's once unstoppable force was crumbling, and for the first time in centuries, the fate of the galaxy was no longer in their hands. Humanity had shown the universe what it meant to fight for survival, and in doing so, had proven that no matter how powerful the enemy, Earth would never back down. The battle had raged on for hours, but the tide was now turning in humanity's favor. The Empire's vast fleet, once an unstoppable force, was beginning to fracture. Human ships, battered but unyielding, had turned the tables. The Empire's commanders, accustomed to quick victories, now faced a crisis that they could not have foreseen. Humanity had fought back, and they had fought hard. Colonel Graves watched the chaos unfold on the command center's display, her expression hardening with determination. Earth's fleet, reinforced by the unexpected arrival of their allies, had dealt a devastating blow to the Empire's forces. The human ships, though smaller and less numerous, moved with a coordination and ferocity that the Empire had underestimated. The Empire's once imposing dreadnoughts were being slowly picked apart by the relentless human assault. "Stay focused," Graves ordered, her voice cold and precise. "We can't let up now. The Empire will not surrender easily. They'll regroup, and they'll come back harder. We have to finish this while we have the advantage." General Salazar stood at her side, his eyes scanning the battlefield. "They're falling back. The remaining ships are retreating, but they're not broken yet. We've gained ground, but we need to press the advantage before they can reorganize." Graves nodded. "We can't give them time to regroup. If we let them escape, they'll just come back stronger. We need to finish this now." The human fleet surged forward, pushing deeper into the Empire's lines. The enemy ships that remained were no longer in a position to defend themselves effectively. The Empire had underestimated Earth's resolve, and now they were paying the price. The battle was a clear victory for humanity, but the price of that victory had been high. Explosions echoed through space as another Empire ship crumpled under the barrage of human fire. Yet despite the victory, the reality of the cost still weighed heavily on Graves. Many ships had been lost, and countless lives had been sacrificed. The enemy fleet had been crippled, but the cost to humanity's fleet had been steep. "We've done it," Salazar said, his voice tinged with exhaustion, but also a trace of triumph. "The Empire is on the ropes. We've shown them that they can't just walk all over us. Earth won this day." Graves didn't respond immediately. She stared at the display, watching the last remnants of the Empire's fleet slip away into hyperspace, their retreat a clear sign that the Empire had been defeated for now. But Graves knew that this victory was just one chapter in a much longer war. The Empire had been knocked down, but they were far from broken. And there was still the matter of what would come next. "We've won this battle, but the war is far from over," Graves said quietly, her eyes narrowing. "The Empire will return. They won't forget this, and they'll come at us with everything they have next time." Salazar turned to face her, a grim understanding in his eyes. "So what now, Colonel? We've taken down one of their biggest fleets, but we know they won't let this slide. What's our next move?" Graves looked around at the faces of her crew, their exhaustion mirrored by the weariness in her own heart. The victory was hard-earned, but she could see the resolve in their eyes. They had stood together and fought as one, and now they had a chance to change the course of history. "We rebuild," she said firmly. "We learn from this, and we prepare. The Empire will come back, but when they do, we'll be ready. We'll build our strength, find new allies, and we'll strike again when the time is right. This war isn't over. It's just begun." The sound of the crew moving in the background was a steady hum of activity. Everyone knew the stakes, and they knew what they had to do. Graves could feel it in her bones. This was only the beginning. As the last of the Empire's fleet vanished into the darkness, the reality of what humanity had accomplished began to sink in. They had fought back the greatest military power the galaxy had ever known. The message was clear. Earth was not to be underestimated. The galaxy would soon learn that the humans who had once been thought of as insignificant were now a force to be reckoned with. And so, with their fleet battered but not broken, the humans stood tall. Their victory was a triumph of will, a declaration that they would not be conquered, no matter how impossible the odds seemed. The Empire had made a grave mistake when they chose to threaten Earth, and now they would have to face the consequences. Graves knew the fight wasn't over, but for the first time, she felt a flicker of hope in her heart. Humanity had proven that they could fight, and they would not stop until their freedom was secure. "We'll make them regret underestimating us," she muttered under her breath, as the stars outside her window slowly began to calm. The Empire may have thought they were invincible, but humanity had just sent them a message they could never forget. Earth would not bow. Earth would not break. And Earth would fight. Forever. The galaxy was still reeling from the shock of humanity's unexpected victory. The Empire, long considered invincible, had been dealt a blow that would echo throughout the stars. Earth's forces had proven their strength, their resilience, and their unwavering resolve to fight for their home. But even as the echoes of battle faded, Colonel Graves knew that the real war was just beginning. The Empire had been wounded, but they were not defeated. Earth had made its stand, but the cost had been staggering. Earth's fleet was now a shadow of its former self, and many brave men and women had given their lives in the fight. But for all the loss, there was a new sense of purpose within humanity. The victory over the Empire was not just a battle won. It was a declaration that humanity could no longer be ignored or underestimated. Graves paced the command center of the Resolute, the dim light of the control room casting long shadows across her tired face. Her mind raced, constantly turning over what they had accomplished and what lay ahead. The Empire would regroup. They would rebuild. And when they returned, they would come with even greater force, more ruthless than before. "We need to prepare," she muttered to herself, her voice barely above a whisper. "We need to be ready for when they come back." Salazar, standing nearby, overheard her words. He walked over, his face drawn with the weight of the situation. "You're right," he said quietly. "The Empire won't let this go. But for now, we've earned a brief moment of peace. Let's use it wisely." Graves nodded, but the uncertainty in her eyes spoke volumes. She could not afford to let her guard down, not for a second. Every victory, no matter how great, was only temporary. The Empire would not rest until they had wiped out humanity, and Graves knew that every decision they made now would determine whether Earth could survive the coming storm. The War Council convened the next day, and the atmosphere was tense. Earth's leaders, military strategists, and allies gathered in the war room, each one carrying the weight of the recent victory and the looming threat of the Empire's return. Graves took her place at the head of the table, her eyes scanning the faces of those around her. "We've won a battle, but not the war," she began, her voice steady but firm. "The Empire will come back stronger than ever, and when they do, we need to be ready. We need to rebuild our forces, train more soldiers, and forge new alliances. The galaxy must know that Earth will never kneel to the Empire again." Her words hung heavy in the air, and there was no disagreement from the room. The people of Earth had seen what the Empire was capable of, and they knew the cost of failing to stand strong. This victory would be their rallying cry, a symbol of their unbreakable spirit. "We'll start with the colonies," General Salazar suggested, his voice gravelly with years of experience. We've already had whispers of support from other systems. We need to organize them, bring them into the fold. The Empire's reach is vast, but we have strength in numbers. If we can unite the other human colonies, we might just have a chance at outmatching them. Graves thought for a moment, her mind calculating the possibilities. Agreed. But we can't rely on just alliances. We need to develop new technologies, improve our ships, and enhance our weapons. The Empire's ships were formidable, but we were able to outmaneuver them because of our unpredictability. We need to keep that edge. The Council agreed. Plans began to take shape, and the work ahead seemed insurmountable. But if humanity was anything, it was relentless. They would fight to rebuild, to strengthen, and to rise again, just as they had done throughout history when faced with the impossible. Graves turned her attention to the screen at the front of the room, which displayed the galaxy map. Earth's position was marked, a small dot surrounded by vast swaths of uncharted space. Beyond Earth's borders, the Empire's reach stretched like an iron fist, but Earth's influence was beginning to spread as well. The victory over the Empire's fleet had sent shockwaves through the galaxy, and more systems were beginning to take notice of humanity's strength. We have one advantage that the Empire does not, Graves said, her voice carrying the weight of both hope and conviction. We have the power of unity. While they operate through fear and domination, we have each other. We fight not for control, not for conquest, but for our freedom and our survival. That is something the Empire will never understand. As the Council continued to strategize, Graves felt a sense of determination building within her. Humanity had fought back once, and they had won. But they had only just begun to prove their worth in the galaxy. There was much more to come, and she would be at the forefront of it. Prepare for the next stage of this war, Graves said, her voice unwavering. We will rebuild, we will unite, and we will strike again when the time is right. The Empire may have underestimated us once, but they will never make that mistake again. With that, the War Council broke up, and the wheels of humanity's future began to turn. It would be a long road ahead, and the challenges would be many. But humanity had just shown the galaxy what they were capable of. And now, there was no turning back.